Hello, good evening, everyone. Just doing a quick mic check. Can we all hear? Karina, could you just confirm that?
Yes, we can. Good night. Yes, we can.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening again, everyone, and welcome to the second evening of our Soft and Skills Live Conference. My name is Celia Davidson Francis, and I'm Director of Alumni Relations, responsible for the global UWI alumni population and based at the UWI regional headquarters in Kingston, Jamaica. I see from the participants this evening, we have people from all over the Caribbean, so that's great. We do have some amazing presentations for you again tonight, and I know you're all looking forward to them. As I mentioned yesterday, the COVID-19 pandemic has halted many 2020 plans and changed so many things, but this Soft and Life Skills webinar will impart key information to UWI alumni, students, and friends of the UE as a benefit of the Pelican Perks Advantage program, and we're glad to see so many participants online already and many more to join. The UWI Alumni Relations team has teamed up with the YoPro Global Foundation and the Young Alumni Advocates to give added value to the academic landscape that UWI usually offers by focusing on the soft and life skills. I'm especially pleased by the involvement of YoPro Global Foundation and the Young Alumni Advocates, who operate regionally and internationally as an active resource network for each other and promote continuous engagement with the UWI and young and all alumni. Again, this evening, I'd like to give a shout out to Nikita West, Nicolette Black, Charles Ball, Maxsalia Salmon, and Christoph Frank of the Young Alumni Advocates for their assistance with putting this conference together, as well as Karina Dice, who is an incredible facilitator, and Micah Garcia, our tech whiz, and also Jana, who is helping this evening. The response to our Soft and Life Skills webinars has been extremely positive, and we are really delighted. The theme, as you all know, is Lessons from 2020, Equipping Yourself for the Future. And we feel that these sessions will capture your imagination, as our speakers are all experts with strategic knowledge and experience. So once again, let me officially welcome you to the second evening. And I'm now pleased to introduce Nikita West, our moderator. She's a UE Stat Alumni Ambassador and also serves as a member of the Young Alumni Advocates. She's also the co-founder of the M&N Foundation for Aspiring Youths. And you can see, therefore, that she has a passion for service. She's a certified project management professional and holds a master's in clinical psychology, a first-class honors degree from UWI Mona, and a postgraduate diploma in business administration from the Mona School of Business. Her most prized role, however, is being mother to her 9-year-old daughter. Nikita will now guide us through this evening's program. So over to you, Nikita.
Hello, everyone, and good night. I hope you all are well. Welcome to day 2 of our Soft and Life Skills Conference. As Celia indicated, our theme is Lessons from 2020, Equipping Yourself for the Future. Again, my name is Nikita West. I am a graduate of the University of the West Indies and a proud member of the Young Alumni Advocates, one of the organizations bringing you this conference this evening. And tonight, I will be your moderator. It is my pleasure being here. Last evening, we spoke about emotional intelligence and its importance in getting ahead. And we also delved into how to maintain our relevance in the dynamic world, especially with COVID-19. Tonight, we have more in store for you. We have Miss Karen Tomlinson, and she will be speaking on everyone communicates, but few connect. How to connect as a leader. Then she'll be followed by Maxsalia Salmon. What about SDGs? That is the Sustainable Development Goals and your role in ensuring the future. It promises to be an exciting and informative evening, and we look forward to your participation. But before we begin, I want to just, talk about a little bit of housekeeping matters. So the first thing is, all presentations or speakers gave permission for the sessions to be recorded. Therefore, it is possible that the audience will appear in the tape sessions. The sessions will be archived via our YouTube channel and may be used for promotional material. Secondly, I would like to remind everyone that this is a voice-activated call. That means that the screen will always switch to the side that is speaking, so we can hear and see the speaker during the presentation. So we have automatically muted the mics, which will remain muted until our question and answer segment. So you're free to type in the chat, because that's how, you know, we facilitate the participation. You can comment, you can make comments, or you can post questions, or you can use the raise hand icon. Now, lastly, a few words about our format. We will have the presentation, the first presentation, followed by a question and answer period. During the question and answer period, we will have the questions via the chat or via the raised hand icon. And your mic will then be unmuted so you can speak. Now, those are just the little housekeeping matters. It's really not anything big. We are ready to begin. Are you ready to begin? I hear the claps. So let's begin. Now it is my pleasure to ask Mrs. Nicolette Wright-Black, my friend, attorney at law who practices in Jamaica. She is a proud Pelican who has benefited from both the UWI Mona campus, where she completed her degree in psychology, and the Cave Hill campus, where she completed her law degree. She serves currently as the first vice president for the UWI Jamaica chapter and as a mentor. She's an avid reader. She loves to bake. She's passionate about youth and about development. Nicolette served as a vice president as well, and president of the UWI, and she is now serving on the YAA board with me. Nicolette, please welcome. Help us to welcome our first presenter.
Thank you, Nikita. Thank you so much. Karen Tomlinson is our first speaker tonight. With a successful 30-year career in the banking industry in the areas of sales and sales support, Karen decided to focus on providing sales training since that was her first love, and has been a sales performance consultant and trainer since 2015. She joined the John Maxwell team late last year since she believes in continuous self-development, and is now a certified John Maxwell speaker, trainer, and coach. She adds value to individuals and businesses in the areas of sales, leadership, communication, and personal growth. It is now my pleasure to hand over to Karen to take us through this evening's first session, entitled Everyone Communicates, Few Connect: How to Connect as a Leader. Over to you, Karen.
Okay, thank you so very much for that introduction. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited to talk to you all about how to connect with people based on John Maxwell's book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And I'm sure you'll all agree that connection is even more important now with COVID-19, you know, because it's really much more difficult for us to connect, and it's even more important for us to connect based upon how persons are feeling now. Now, most of you may know John Maxwell, but many of you might not know that he's a #1 New York Times bestselling author with over 100 books selling more than 25 million copies. He's a leadership coach who in 2014 was voted as the #1 leader in business by the American Management Association and the most influential leadership expert in the world by Business Insider and Inc. magazine. He's a very skilled communicator and, more importantly, a skilled connector. And he's a founder of the John Maxwell Company and the John Maxwell team, of which I'm a part. As mentioned, I'm one of his certified team members, and I speak, train, and coach on leadership development, personal growth, and communication. But before we start looking at how to connect as a leader, I want you to take a look at this next slide and think about the first thing that you see. Trying to move the slide. Okay. So I'm sure that some of you might see a black urn, and some of you may see two people face to face looking at each other. And I'm sure also that once I said the opposite of what you saw, that you also saw the other. Now, what you see all depends on where your awareness is. It is the same picture, but it is interesting that the same picture is viewed differently by different people. So if the picture is the same, then the difference must be with the individual. I'm sure you'd agree. So there's something different that happened to the average adult that changes the way that we see things. The difference is called conditioning. We don't necessarily see the world as it really is. We see it the way we are. So the implications for this are enormous, especially as it relates to communication. This is a very simple example, but it illustrates several powerful points that we're all very different.
Hi, Karen. Sorry to disturb your presentation. And a few persons are indicating that they're not seeing your slide. I'm not sure what is happening. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it very clearly. Yes, I'm seeing it very clearly.
Not sure what to do then, because I brought it up from the very beginning and I'm just moving the slides along.
Okay, all right. So it's visible now, I see. So let's continue. So sorry to interrupt.
All right, no problem. So I was just making the point that we're all very different, and because we see the world differently and have different beliefs, it's going to affect the way that we each communicate and connect with each other. So everybody's seeing this now? Objectives and review, overview. All right, so it's no secret that the ability to connect with others is a major determining factor in reaching our full potential. Connecting is a skill you can learn and apply in your professional, personal, and family relationships. And we are all leaders in one way or another. So when we talk about connecting as a leader, it doesn't necessarily mean just professionally, it means also personally, in your families, with your children, etc. So it applies to every single person, because we need people, as we can't do anything on our own in today's world. So we need to be able to connect and influence other persons. The Everyone Communicates Few Connect book is a very powerful learning system. The objectives of this training in connecting as a leader are to, 1, learn how to identify with people and relate to others in a way which increases your influence with them. We're going to be looking at a very abbreviated version based upon a limitation in time of the first half of the book, which speaks about the 5 connecting principles, which are fundamental for understanding how to connect with people. And we're hoping that by the end of this presentation, we'll be able to give you some skills and tools that you'll need in order to effectively communicate and connect, whether you're a leader in an organization or with your co-workers, family, friends, etc. Because learning to connect with people will definitely change your life. So world-renowned leadership expert John Maxwell, that I spoke about earlier, he has said that a person who can get their ideas across through communication to others will have the key to success. So everything we do every day in life, we are trying to convince somebody, we are trying to get our point across to influence somebody. So as he says, if you ask me, what's the one thing you can do to be more successful, I'd say learn to communicate. That way you'll be able to sell your ideas and influence other people. So what he's basically saying that if we want to succeed, only one thing will give us greater success in our personal and professional lives. And it isn't knowledge, or skills, or experience, or talent. It's our ability to connect with people. And if we're not doing so now, it's important that we learn. So we can improve our results by improving our ability to connect and influence people in an ethical way. Let me make that very clear, in an ethical way. So unfortunately, most people get leadership positions in most organizations based on a technical assessment. The best technician gets promoted to lead the team. The trouble is that leadership and technical skills are 2 totally different skills. One is left-brained, the other one is right-brained. Leadership is influence and technical skills are technical skills. So influence means connecting with people, which comes from valuing people. So leadership is all about others, and so is connecting. So what is the definition of connecting? Simply put by John Maxwell, he defines it as the ability to identify with people and relate to them in a way that increases your influence. Some people connect intuitively because they automatically value people. Others recognize connecting as important but lack the tools and techniques. But don't fear, it is a skill, as I said, that can be learned. And the better we're able to connect with people, the better the results. And some of the results will include, once you start connecting with others one-on-one, in groups or in an audience, your sense of community will improve. Your ability to create teamwork will increase and your influence will skyrocket. People who connect with others have better relationships. They experience less conflict, sure you'd agree with that, and get more things done than those who cannot connect. We don't live in a world on our own, so we really need to connect with people to get things done. And leaders who have learned the art are able to communicate their ideas persuasively, establishing buy-in and attracting followers. So as we have said, even if connecting with people isn't something that you feel you can do now, you can learn how to do it. So some of the things I want you to think about while we're discussing today is what do you think would change in your life if you developed as a better communicator? How would things change at work if you're better able to connect with your team, if you have a team, or with your boss and colleagues? And how could you make a greater impact in your personal relationships? You know, your significant other, your children, how would these relationships differ if you connected better? So if you think connecting can help you with any of these, then we're going to look at these talk about this by looking at the 5 connecting principles that I mentioned to you before. So connecting principle number 1. So we need people, as I mentioned, as we can't do everything on our own. So we need to be able to connect and influence other people to succeed in this world, which is a foundation for connecting principle number 1, which states that connecting increases your influence in every situation. So every day, we are faced with a lot of different types of communication: emails, text messages, TV, newspapers, billboards, Facebook, Instagram, etc. At the same time, we also have messages that we want to get across to others. And it is said that on average, most people speak about 16,000 words a day. I wonder sometimes if I speak as much, but it says 16,000 words a day. So the question is, how can we make our words count and really communicate and connect with others? So we can do it when we understand that 1, connecting can make you or break you. If you cannot find a way to communicate effectively, you won't be able to reach your potential, you won't be able to succeed in the way you desire, and you'll forever be frustrated. Connecting is key. The ability to communicate and connect with others is a major determining factor in reaching your potential, as we mentioned, in all relationships, whether you're a leader in an organization or with your family, etc. And it is definitely crucial for leaders, especially in an organization. And according to the Harvard Business Review, the number 1 criteria for advancement and promotion for any professional is an ability to communicate effectively. Leadership effectiveness depends to a high degree upon good communication skills. And as I mentioned, it is crucial whether you're leading a company, leading a nation, or leading a child. And talent is not going to be enough. Experience isn't going to be enough. In order to lead others, we must be able to communicate well, and connecting is key. Robert Dalek, a presidential historian, he did a case study in connecting in the context of leadership, looking at the presidents of the United States. He found that successful presidents exhibited 5 skills and qualities that enabled them to achieve things that others didn't. And 4 of those 5 skills depend heavily upon the ability to communicate and connect on multiple levels. They have to have vision, which is leadership. You know, leaders need to be able to describe where they're going and get buy-in. I'm sure you'd agree with that. If our leaders don't give us the vision and get the buy-in from us, then we won't be connecting with them and supporting them. Pragmatism, as well as consensus building, leaders need to be able to persuade people to come along with them. Charisma, which is leaders need to connect on a personal level, and trustworthiness, leaders need to demonstrate credibility. So the vision, the consensus building, the charisma, and the trustworthiness are the 4 that are crucial for connecting. And I'm sure you can think of some successful leaders who you believe have some of those qualities, especially some of the presidents in the United States that this historian is referring to, like Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, etc. And of course, we can think of leaders in our own countries in terms of those that have connected with us versus those who have not connected with us. Do they have the vision? Did they have consensus building? Did they have charisma, and were they trustworthy? Other areas that we need to be able to understand is in terms of connecting, helping us in every area of life. As I said, it's not just for leaders, It's for anybody who desires to be more effective. For example, if you're in sales, you need to connect with your customers. You need to transition them from being a lead into a prospect into a customer, and a customer into a client who refers to you continuously. That is what connection does in every single area. In the classroom, if you're a teacher, you have to connect with your children. Serving customers is about connecting. Raising kids is about connecting. When you connect with your children, you are able to influence them in more ways than one, but rather than just in terms of being reprimanding, etc. But you need to connect in every single area of life. And not only that, but you also have to have the desire to connect. You need to recognize that to succeed with other people, you need to be able to connect. And when you connect with others, you position yourself to make the most of your skills and talents. Think about it. You know, you might have been the best worker in your organization, but you didn't get promoted. Or you might have been a better player than some in a basketball or a football team, but you didn't get selected. So it's usually the connection that gets person selected. And here, and let me make it clear, I'm not talking about sucking up to persons. I'm talking about the connection. When you connect with persons and you also have the skills and talents, you'll be able to advance in life. So the skills and talents are important, but that connection with other persons is very, very important as well. And not only do you have to have the desire, but you have to have the courage to change. So simply recognizing that you're not connecting is not enough. You need to change, and that requires intentionally wanting to have a positive influence on others. So ask yourself the question in terms of these 6 ways that we're just talking about. Do you recognize that connecting can make or break you, that it is key, that it is crucial for you as a leader, that it helps in every area of life, that you need to have the desire to connect and also the courage to change? And it is also important to note that more talk isn't the answer to acquiring these skills. What is very important for you to note is that the ability to connect with others begins with understanding the value of people. So it starts with your attitude. You have to be able to value people, to want to connect with them. So your attitude is not only how you connect, but why you want to connect. And you need to be very genuine in your need to add value to others, to help and care for others if you want to connect with them. That is very, very important. And a study that was done by Jay Hall of the consulting company Teleometrics, he concluded after he studied 16,000 executives that those achievers were the ones who cared about people as well as profits. There was a correlation between achievement and the ability to care for and connect with people. They got higher profits. You know, these are the people who sought advice from their staff and view them optimistically and actively listen to their people. Those are the ones who succeeded versus the ones who did not connect. So it is definitely important for you as a leader of an organization as well, because there is definitely a correlation between achievement and the ability to care for and connect with people. Now, if you're facing connecting challenges as John was early in his career and life, and I might say I could say the same, you can overcome them with your connecting choices. You can learn to connect with every kind of person in every kind of situation if you focus on other people. So this is connecting principle number 2. Connecting is all about others. And John speaks about studying good communicators, including Zig Ziglar, who he heard speak when John was 29 years old. Zig's way of connecting with the audience totally changed John's way of communicating. That day he heard Zig say, if you first help people get what they want, they will help you get what you want. And that's one of the philosophies I teach extensively in my sales training, because if you can help your customers or your clients to achieve what they want, what their needs are, you will also get what you want. And he walked away with 2 resolutions. 1, he would study good communicators. And 2, he would try to connect with others by focusing on them and their needs instead of his own. And this is something that he has done successfully in life. But why do some people miss it? Because there are certain reasons why, especially when we're younger, why we're not able to connect with persons. And that includes like immaturity. Immature people do not see things from someone else's point of view. So sometimes the more mature we get, notice I didn't say the older you get, the more mature you get, you'll be able to see things from other people's point of view. Ego is also another real danger. Persons who develop unhealthy, strong egos. The failure to value others, as we said a while ago, to add value to others, you must first value them. And that ties in with your attitude. You really need to genuinely value other people. And sometimes insecurity. Too often people place too much emphasis or focus on themselves and not on others because they're insecure. So we need to be mindful of these factors which might be preventing us from connecting. And so to get over these hurdles, we need to think about some of the things that people might be asking us, because when people feel connected to us, they really need to feel, one, that you care about them. Mutual concern creates connection between people. Whenever you can help other people to understand that you care, you open the door to connection. And then you begin to create a relationship, which whether it is in partnerships, sales, whatever it is situation we are in, people need to know that we care about them first in order for us to be able to connect with them. It's all about the other person. They need to feel that we can help them. Nobody wants to be sold, but everybody wants to be helped. And of course, they want to trust you. Trust is vital to any business. And I can honestly say, I remember when I became the branch manager of about 67 persons some years ago, I thought to myself, how do I really connect with these 67 people? And I had to be able to find a way to let them know that I cared about them, wanted to work very closely with them and help them. And eventually they learned to trust me. And that was the reason why I was successful as a branch manager. Initially, I used to think that I was a great communicator because I was used to give out a lot of information, but then I recognized, and I only wish that I had done this John Maxwell training long time ago, because I recognize that there's a big difference between being a communicator and being a connector. So we really need to understand that people need to know that we care about them, that we can help them, and that they can trust us. And once that happens, then they will recognize that the focus is on them and they will want to connect with you. So spend time trying to think from other people's perspectives and explore what is important to them. You can connect with people if you're willing to get off your own agenda. When you think about others, try and understand who they are and what they want. And there's an expression that I use all the time, especially when I'm doing my sales training. It says, people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is so true. I'm sure you'd agree. All right, so you watch a reality show. Let us say you watch a reality show on television where two talented persons are singing the same song. One gives you goosebumps, the other leaves you cold. You're listening to two professors at a university teach the same subject, same class using the same syllabus, but students line up to register for one professor versus the other. So what is the reason for the difference in these two examples? The answer is because people respond to others based not only according to the words that they use, but on the connection that they experience with that person. And what is the cause for that connection? Because connection or connecting goes beyond words. When people try to communicate with others, many believe that it is only the message that matters, but the reality is that communication goes way beyond words. And if we want to succeed in connecting with others, we not only need to recognize the importance of connecting, but have the desire, as we mentioned, and the courage, value people, recognize it's about others, and also making sure that our communication goes beyond words. And we can do this by connecting visually, intellectually, emotionally, and verbally. So between hearing and seeing, sight is the more important and powerful sense when it comes to communication. According to Sonia Hamilton in the book, How to Talk So People Listen, she says that we remember 85 to 90% of what we see, but less than 15% of what we hear. That means that if you want people to learn and remember, you must support your ideas by showing them ideas. And I'm sure you'd agree that we live in a visual age, and a lot of times we tend to judge people initially based upon their appearance. So it's really true that we remember what we see, but less of what we hear. So the first component, which is connecting visually, it speaks to nonverbal signals being the first impression that people see, including our facial expressions, our energy, our stance, etc. So we need to look at eliminating personal distractions in terms of our clothing, our personal habits, stop, in terms of fidgeting, etc. Expand our range of expression, making sure that we're smiling and being expressive and all of those things. And then the second component speaks to connecting intellectually, what people understand. So we need to know our subject matter. We have to bring our experience, our knowledge, etc., to connect consistently, and also knowing ourselves. Effective communicators are very comfortable in their own skin, and that's something that you will learn to develop over time. So we need to really make sure that we are making sure that we know our subject matter and knowing ourselves before we can connect. And as Maya Angelou says, people will not always remember what you said. They will not always remember what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And these words are the basis for the third component of connection, which speaks to what people feel. Connecting emotionally. Great leaders win over the hearts and minds of others. And you notice that the heart comes first. People hear your voice, but they will feel your attitude. Remember, we said that your attitude has to come from a genuine place, because persons will know if you're faking it. So the exact words that we use are far less important than the energy, the intensity, and the conviction in which we use them. So we said that communication goes beyond words, and to connect with people, we must appeal to them visually, intellectually, and emotionally. However, that does not mean that we should ignore the fourth component, which is what people hear, because it's still very important. Connecting verbally or the power of words, those are all still important. So what we say and how we say things make a huge impact. So we need to choose our words, even in a very difficult situation. And I'm sure you'll agree that when somebody shouts at you, the volume, the tone, the inflection, or the timing, it has the potential to help to make you disconnect if somebody really shouts at you. So we need to be mindful of our tone, inflection, timing, and volume when connecting verbally, because words are the currency of ideas and have the power to change the world. And of course, we need to use all the four things together in terms of putting it all together as it relates to connecting principle number 3. So the art of communicating beyond words requires the ability to bring all four components, using the right words, with the right emotion, while being intellectually convincing and making the right visual impression. And all of this needs to be done, as we said, with the right tone of voice, etc. And it is important to find your own style. Let me emphasize that. Be yourself. You can't copy somebody else's style. It's good to watch other communicators, how they connect, but you really have to find your own style and be yourself. Know your strengths and use them to the greatest advantage and make your message your own. So good communicators use a lot of energy in their communication. It takes a lot of energy to connect with people. It does not take a lot of energy to say something, but it takes a lot of energy to move somebody. And as John says, your audience gets out of it what you put in. And I'm sure if you were to make a list of the top 3 people that you love connecting with, I'm sure you'd agree that they are high energy people, which is what they bring to the relationship that invites you to want to interact with them. But even when people come across as fairly low key, they usually possess reserves of energy that are not maybe evident on the surface. But connecting with other people doesn't just happen on its own. If you want to connect with others, you have to be intentional about it. And that always requires energy, which is a connecting principle number 4. So to make the most of connecting opportunities, we have to channel our energy strategically. When John says that energy is required to connect with others, he's not saying that you have to be a high energy person all the time, nor do you have to be an extrovert. You must simply be willing to use whatever energy you have to focus on others and reach out to them. Introverts can exhibit extroverted behavior, but it normally drains an introvert and they need to recharge sooner than an extrovert. So ask yourself, are you an introvert or are you an extrovert? And sometimes I think some of the persons who have worked with me over the years, they might consider me an extrovert, but I actually consider myself to be an introvert. But I know that I need to bring the energy to whatever it is that I do. And I also know that I need to recharge sooner than an extrovert. But it simply comes down to being intentional about connecting with others. So there are 5 observations about the energy required to connect and what action you should take. So you should be strategic in using that energy, including connecting requires initiative, going first. It requires clarity in terms of preparation. It requires patience. It requires selflessness, and it also requires stamina. There is a statement that Sam Walton made. Sam Walton, as you might know, is the founder of Walmart and Sam's Club. And he has these words as one of the signs at the Walmart headquarters, highlighting the values and the philosophy of that organization. It says, "From this day forward, I solemnly promise and declare that every time a customer comes within 10 feet of me, I will smile, look him in the eye, and greet him." So this speaks to the first proactive way to use energy, which was connecting requires initiative, go first. Sam Walton understood the importance of initiating contact with others. Initiative to any relationship is what a lighted match is to a candle. Think about that. Connection requires initiative. Taking initiative is important in relationships. A lot of persons, do that when they network, etc. And John says, leaders go first. So if you want to connect, do not wait. Initiate. You always remember the person who initiated a connection with you. And I'm sure you'd agree with that. So while connecting requires being willing to initiate with others, which often means taking action in the moment, it also requires that we know, as we said, what we're doing when we make contact. Connecting requires clarity, which is preparation. So this is the second proactive way to use energy. So first, we need to prepare ourselves personally. Helping ourselves makes us more capable of helping others. To add value to others, we have to make ourselves more valuable. And one of the statements that John uses about us as the John Maxwell team is something that resonates very deeply with me. He says that we are people of value who add value to people. So in order for us to be able to go out there and speak, train, and coach, we first have to be valuable people. So we have to make sure that we prepare ourselves. We also need to know our audience, people preparation, right? Making sure that ask ourselves some questions. Who are they? What do they care about? Where do they come from, etc. Get to know the persons who you are going to be making a presentation to. Know your audience, or whether it is one-on-one in a group or a large group of people. And of course, professional preparation. If you communicate and connect well, you must know what you're talking about, because that delivers substance. The third proactive way to use energy for connecting, it says connecting requires patience. Good connectors exhibit patience. And as Lisa Thorne says, everybody is in a hurry, but that prevents most of us from connecting with others effectively. If we want to connect with people, we need to slow down. So we need to set aside our own agenda sometimes to include others. And this, of course, takes energy. Anything really worthwhile in life, we need to take time to build it. And of course, connecting always begins with a commitment to someone else, which is why we say that connecting requires selflessness, which is a fourth proactive way to use energy for connecting. So we feel connected to givers, not takers. The great connectors are selfless, and they bring love, grace, gratitude, and compassion. So being a giver certainly requires energy, but it is usually a win-win situation, because once you give, usually things come back tenfold to you. I'm sure you'd agree with that statement. And the last section speaks to connecting requiring stamina. If we really want to connect, it's going to, as we said, require energy, which is another proactive way to use energy for connecting here in terms of stamina. So one of the things that is key for us to make sure that we can carve out some moments to do what energizes us, then we can always get those reserves of energy. So we need to just make sure that we're connected. What it is that we do, what it is that, whether we're stressed out, what is it that gets us back full of energy? Whether it's some persons, it's exercising, for some persons it might be laughter, whatever it is, we need to make sure that we recharge and build up that reserve of energy, because connecting requires stamina. And as the fifth principle says, connecting is more skill than natural talent. As was mentioned before, we can learn this skill once we really want to. We can learn to connect, we can learn to lead, and we can learn to improve our ability to influence people if we really, really want it. Anyone can learn to make every communication an opportunity for a powerful connection. You know, all good speakers were bad speakers first. And in fact, John speaks about not being able to connect until maybe 8 to 9 years after he started speaking. And I certainly can remember the first time I made a presentation. It was probably way before some of you on the line were born. I can tell you what I had on the day because I was so nervous making a presentation. But it's something that with practice, and as I said, if you make sure that you're prepared, make sure that you are, you know, you have the skills, the talent, and making sure that you're connecting with people, then you can learn to be an excellent speaker. So one of the things that he did over the years was studied a lot of different communicators, persons who made presentations and so on. And he found that there were a number of things that connectors had in common. So they made everything they talked about, you know, sound new. They used illustrations. They moved the audience, creating that kind of feeling that made you want to stand up and cheer at the end. They were electric. They got their audience laughing. They use a lot of humor. And they put everybody at ease, giving everybody a sense of security. And of course, possessed a great sense of confidence. They spoke with conviction. And I'm sure you'd agree that if somebody were to stand up and say, boy, you know, I'm so nervous, or boy, I'm so whatever, it doesn't give you confidence in that speaker. So we need to be able to have a confidence in ourselves that it makes everybody in the audience feel like they're our best friend. These connectors all exhibited authenticity as well, and they prepared thoroughly. On the other hand, there were those non-connectors that he observed, and these persons, you know, spoke for a duration of a segment and said nothing. They spoke down to the audience. Their body language, facial expressions displayed a negative attitude. They spoke in monotone voices, were totally devoid of passion, didn't have, you know, any energy. So great communicators are not all cut from the same cloth, but as we saw, different communicators connected in different ways with their own style. And that does not develop by accident. We really need to make sure that is a skill that we can learn, practice. As John did, we can study good communicators and think about what it is that they do in order for us to learn from them and of course adapt it to your own style. But think about the things. What are the things that make people listen? You can learn to connect with others by making the most, as we said, of your skills and experience, but there are a number of factors that great communicators seem to draw on that make people want to listen to them. So one is relationships. And by that I mean gaining credibility through a relationship with somebody who recommends you and shows confidence in you. So I don't know if you know the name Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz. These are both TV personalities. Both got their own shows on TV after appearing on Oprah Winfrey's show. So she was able, the relationship that they had with Oprah was able to work for them and get them to connect with others. You can show insight and communicate something of value that you know. You can share your successes and show your experience in terms of what you have done. You can also establish your credibility in terms of your ability and what you can do. So people like Usain Bolt, Michael Jordan, they get endorsements based upon their ability in their different fields. And of course, being relatable in terms of how you have lived and the sacrifices that you have made. For example, Mother Teresa. So these 5 connection factors are just the beginning. There are other ways in which you can connect with people. But we all just need to remember that becoming a connector is a process. There may be no single thing more important in our efforts to achieve meaningful work and fulfilling relationships than to learn to practice the art of communication. So make communication and connecting your goal if you want to achieve personal success and if you want to become a better leader. Become a student of communication, study effective and ineffective speakers, and observe what works and what doesn't. And you can therefore become better at it once you work at it. And we need to practice connecting at all different levels, one-on-one, in a group, and with an audience. And of course, connecting one-on-one is more important than in a group or with an audience because 80 to 90%, I'm sure, of all our connection occurs at this level. At work, with our employees, with our boss, our friends, family, etc. We can, to connect in a group, we must take initiative with the people in the group. And one of the best ways to learn to connect with an audience is to observe the communicators, as we said, learn from them, and adapt with your own style. And generally, if we making sure that we're learning how to communicate effectively, if we learn how to connect with people, there are some signals that we can know when we have connected with others. When you see these things, you'll know that you have connected with other people. And these includes things like people going the extra mile, unsolicited appreciation, unguarded openness, increased communication, people expressing themselves more readily. People are feeling good about what they're doing. They're bonding with you emotionally. You're feeling the positive energy, the growing synchrony, as well as the unconditional love. So when you can see evidence of these signals, you will know that you're connecting. So things to think about: when you interact one-on-one with someone important in your life, do you receive any of these connecting signals? When you lead a meeting or attend a group function, are these connecting signals evident? And when you speak to an audience, but do you connect with them in such a way that you're not only good at communicating, but it's also a highly enjoyable experience for you and them? And if you can answer any of these questions, then you need, if you cannot answer rather with a resounding yes, then you would need to improve your ability to connect with others. So to summarize, we spoke about the 5 connecting principles. Connecting increases your influence in every situation, which speaks to understanding that it can make or break you. It's key, it's crucial for leaders, helps in every area of your life. And you have to have the desire and the courage to change. Connecting principle number 2 is connecting is all about others. We spoke about showing that you care, that you can help people, and that they can trust you, and to spend time thinking about other people's perspectives and explore what is important to them. Connecting principle number 3, connecting goes beyond words, and we looked at the 4 components of connecting: visually, intellectually, emotionally, and of course, what we say verbally. Connecting always requires energy, and we talked about the 5 proactive things to use energy for connecting: taking initiative, ensuring clarity, being patient, being selfless, and recognizing that connecting requires stamina, so we must recharge. And of course, connecting principle number 5, that connecting is more skill than natural talent. So observe the behaviors of connectors and look at how you can adapt some of these skills, but of course, making sure that you use your own style. So think about what your takeaways are and what you can apply, what you can change, and what you can teach from this section in terms of your own action plan. So thank you all for listening. And if you want to learn more about connecting, because I dig deeper into my mastermind leadership training in terms of everyone communicates, you connect in January. So I also not only look more deeply at the 5 connecting principles, but they also the practices as well as other workshops and training that I do. And this is my contact information for anybody who wants to get in touch with me. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you so much. Connecting is more a skill than natural talent. There may be no single thing more important in our efforts to achieve meaningful work and fulfilling relationships than to learn to practice the art of communication. So Karen would have just shared with us some tips, some factors that affect our communication, or how to be influential in how we communicate. Now, there's some things that came out: being intentional, having the energy, being patient, being authentic. This is the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to pose your questions. Again, you can put your questions in the chat, or you can also raise the hand icon to indicate if you want to speak and ask your question. I know I have a few questions so far, and kudos, Karen. A lot of the persons are indicating that it has been a great presentation. But here's the first question that we have. Do you think we know how to connect and network well in the Caribbean?
Wow. That's an interesting question. I can probably speak for Jamaica. I do not believe that we network effectively. I think that we regard networking as something where we are supposed to go and get a sale or get, something immediate gratification. But I don't think a lot of persons recognize that networking is about the creation of a connection, the start of a relationship. So it's something that we need to nurture after the networking event. And I think a lot of persons go to networking events, they collect a lot of business cards, but the crucial thing is what happens after we go back to the office or wherever. We don't do anything about establishing that connection after the networking event. And that is just as crucial as attending a networking event and talking to people and getting to know persons. So what we do after the networking event, the follow through, I think is where we have a weakness. I don't think we have a problem in going to the event and meeting people and talking to people. But what we do afterwards, I don't think is very successful.
And I guess it goes back to being intentional. So what it is that you want to, because I know you said that communicating is about the person and not yourself. So it's also about what you desire from that relationship and how you build on that. We have a question from Sophia Clark. How do you link self-introspection with connectivity?
Repeat that.
How do you link self-introspection with connectivity?
I think one of the things that we mentioned was getting to know yourself first, because you have to be able to know yourself before you can get to connect with others. So if you don't have that self-knowledge and that self-confidence, so you really need to do that self-introspection that was mentioned a while ago. Discover yourself first before you can actually go out and discover other people. And once you become comfortable in your own skin, it makes it easier for you to be able to connect with others. So that self-introspection is what we were talking about before in terms of getting to know yourself.
Right, because you did speak about connecting visually, intellectually, emotionally, and verbally. Right. So you really have to be aware of yourself. So
you have to be aware, and that sometimes comes with maturity, because as I mentioned earlier too, I think I wish I had done some of this learning lots of years ago when I was much younger. But sometimes it comes with the maturity. Knowing yourself comes with the maturity. But if you really, even if you're young at this point, you can still start now, do that self-introspection, get to know yourselves, and making sure that you have the right attitude in terms of knowing how to connect with other people. Because you can't fake it, You can pretend that you want to connect with people, but people will know if you are genuine after a short while. So you have to be able to really value people and want to really connect with other persons. It has to be genuine.
Okay, great. We have a question from DRB. Are there special considerations for presenting and connecting via Zoom, or I would say virtually?
Yes. That certainly has been a challenge, because I myself am used to presenting face-to-face. But one of the things that I personally prefer, like when you're in Zoom, I mean, this is a webinar, so you're talking to quite a number of persons. But like in a Zoom meeting, one of the things that I find makes it very difficult to connect virtually is when persons keep off their cameras. Because to me, I don't know how you can connect with a black box. As I said, this is a webinar, so this is a different situation. But when you're in a Zoom meeting with your co-workers or whatever it is, I know Nikita and I are both Kiwanians. And so what are the things that always perturbs me, that everybody has their camera off? If you are going to connect with people, it has to be visual, as we said. It is a very visual thing. So I think connection within the virtual hemisphere, the same concepts would apply, but even more so than before, because we are not face-to-face. So we really have to make a stronger effort to making sure that we're connecting visually, we're connecting emotionally, intellectually, and so on. So it really is more amplified, I think, in the virtual world. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, it is even more important because of what's happening with COVID. We really need to be reaching out and connecting with more people, because people need that connection even more than they did before COVID.
Absolutely. It actually speaks to something that I'm going to share in the chat right now, where there is an article on LinkedIn that I was reading, and it spoke about, the importance of basically turning on your camera. 80% of us, while the camera is off, we're multitasking. Are we really connected?
Exactly.
So it speaks exactly to what you just said. So thanks for that. We have another question from Karen, who asked, do you have any suggestions to replace or substitute that physical touch during and post-COVID era when trying to connect with others?
Anything that can substitute for the physical touch? I think we have to just come up with some creative ways, you know, of doing things. Like, I know, for example, well, I guess I don't think anything can really substitute for the physical touch, to be honest with you. But I just think that they reaching out to people more, you know, calling people, making sure that you're on. And I'm just, it's a good thing that it happened in this time where everything can be virtual, because can you imagine if it had happened when we weren't so computer or techie savvy in terms of having these different ways of connecting virtually. So I just think that we need to make more, there's nothing to substitute for the physical hub, but we just need to make sure that we're connecting more frequently, that we're connecting virtually in this Zoom space or whatever space it is that we're using. And just keep on reaching out to persons more, because you never know what's happening with people. But I don't think there's anything that can substitute for the touch. Now, as a trainer, again, I have to find creative ways. So for example, when I'm face-to-face in my sales training, for example, I would give out certain tokens, you know, for of appreciation. I would give certain things to people. I would get more involved in group exercises, but we just have to kind of get creative. As I said, Zoom has things like, you know, they meet in rooms, so you can put people in group for these group discussions. So we just have to try and find all the different creative ways that we can connect with persons. But I really don't believe that there's anything that can make up for that physical touch. But we have to make sure that we're making every effort in this virtual space to connect with people.
I'll probably just add a point that one of our presenters spoke about yesterday. It is not replacing physical touch at all, but it was important in demonstrating emotional intelligence, and that was listening, the ability to listen without responding or reacting, just to listen. So that's important, and demonstrating, you know, your body language showing that you are indeed listening and connecting with the person. So I'll just add that.
And having the camera on.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
We do have another question, and this may be the last one I'm taking, from Nadine. Can you have someone who connects well in a group setting, but not one-on-one? If yes, why the disconnect?
Oh, most definitely, because some persons really connect much better in a group or with a large audience than one-on-one. And I think you mentioned something about listening a while ago. When you're with an audience, most of the times you're making a presentation or you're having a group discussion or whatever. I think when you connect one-on-one, you have to have better listening skills, even more so than with a group or with an audience. So if you are not connecting one-on-one, you have to look within yourself to say, am I really making it about the other person? Am I listening to that person? So we really need to, again, because I think connecting one-on-one is more difficult than in a group or in an audience. So really, if we're not connecting one-on-one, then we really need to think about why is it? And maybe ask the other persons, because it's easier to get feedback that way. So if you have a close friend or a family member, you could ask them to give you feedback on how you connect with them and let them tell you what it is that you're maybe not doing. But I really believe it comes down to the fact that you have to really make that focus be on that person. You have to show that you value that person. And as I said, the listening skills are very important, because when you listen to people, they feel heard. So we have to make it about the other person. Remember that it's about them. Not to say that they should make it about you, because it's a two-way street. But I think the reason why we find it harder to connect with one-on-one is because it takes more effort on our part. So we really need to figure out what it is that I'm not doing, why it is that it's more difficult for me to connect with the other person. But try listening to the other person and make it about them and see if that helps.
Okay, thank you so much, Karen. We do have two more questions, and I really want to, because I think I saw some comments about, you know, persons not being able to follow through when you were speaking about the networking. So DRB was sharing that I have a weakness with follow through with networking, as you said. My excuse is being too busy. Really, could it be habitual procrastination? What do you suggest for someone like that, trying to improve connection and business prospects, etc.? Would you suggest getting an assistant to help with organizing or connecting? Would that be sincere? Sorry.
Well, I definitely just think that we need to make a bigger effort, because and don't wait, don't procrastinate, as you said, because if the event happens today, within 48 hours, 48 to 72 hours, we should make some connection with that person. So don't wait. And the longer we procrastinate is the more that we don't follow through. So if you make it a habit, and if you even, like, for example, I'm a planner. Everything I plan and I write it down, you know, for young persons, I might put it in some kind of ticket, whatever. But I've been using, from I'm in my 20s, I've been using a diary to write down everything. So if you make sure that you make some kind, whatever way you use to make your plans, so you know that within 48 hours, you're going to connect with this person again. You can send them a friend connection through LinkedIn. If it's professional, I would certainly recommend LinkedIn, for example, rather than say Facebook. Depends on what it is. If it's something personal, of course, you can use all the different social medias. But I would suggest that you send them a LinkedIn request. You know, if it's somebody that you promise to do something for, you make sure you follow through within 48 hours. So you just have to make sure that you stop the procrastinating and put a plan in place, so that whenever you attend a networking event, that you know that within 48 hours to 72 hours, I'm going to be doing something to connect with this person within that time frame. So for example, when I had a sales team, within 24 hours, they had to give me an idea of how many persons they had connected with at the networking event, and they would have to advise me what they have done in terms of following through. So we need to make sure that we're doing, just have a plan, just like how you do everything else in your work life. Have a plan for the follow through as well, and make sure that you do it, because whatever responsibilities you have at work, you make sure that you do them. In the same way, if you know that you're going to a networking event, there should be a plan in place as to what it is that you're going to be doing after the networking event within 72 hours. How are you going to contact that person?
So DRB, we just have to be intentional about it.
Yes.
I'm not so good at it either, but you know, it's something that we're learning here. These are skills that I think we will find valuable in the future. Right now, actually. The last question.
Make it something that you know that you need to do. Just as.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen. The last question. Could you give an example or examples of stories of successful connections and bad connections that people would have shared with you?
Oh, wow. As they shared with me. Well, I don't know if persons have necessarily shared bad connections with me or good, but I personally can speak about some good connections, because when we're talking about relationships, for example, I know that persons who have known my work over the years have been influential in terms of getting me connected with other persons. So remember, we spoke about relationships as somebody who you know can get, link you up or connect you with persons who they can influence other person's decision, in other words. So because of persons that I have known in my 30-year banking career, I have been able to get other, especially since I branched out on my own as a sales performance consultant and trainer. I actually got a contract for 4 years with a company for 4 out of those 5 years based upon somebody who I had trained in a previous organization. So sometimes a relationship that you have. So I can speak to a few good connections that because of people that who know me and because they know my skills and my talents, they have recommended me for different jobs, especially since I branched out on my own. In terms of a bad connection, I really would have to dig deep for that one. I don't recall any off the top of my head. I would have to think about that one.
Okay, thank you so much, Karen. I don't have to say it, or participants are saying it. It has been an excellent presentation. They are learning a lot. They have learned a lot. I saw a lot of requests for your contact information. So you may want to put that back up quickly. I know the presentations can be made available after, but thank you so much. It has been quite informative and engaging. I've learned a lot, and I know you guys have learned a lot as well. Now we're going to be going into our second presentation, and it's going to be on what about SDGs? What about the Sustainable Development Goals? You know, your role in ensuring the future. You know, we don't live in isolation, as Karen said. We exist together. And how do we plan around that? How do we prepare around that? And how do we prepare for that? And we have Maxsalia Salmon, who is going to make that presentation. Now I ask Nicolette to please welcome and give the bio of Maxsalia.
Thank you, Nikita. Maxsalia Salmon has over 8 years experience in the development sector, engaging in activities related to youth development, gender equality, sexual and reproductive health and rights, diplomacy, philanthropy, and development coordination. Maxsalia currently works as a Partnerships and Development Finance Officer in the Office of the United Nations Resident Coordinator, where she enjoys collaborating with other stakeholders to ensure that no one is left behind as we strive to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. She's a proud UWI graduate and is also a UESTAT Alumni Ambassador and Young Alumni Advocate, part of the group putting on this inaugural virtual conference. And she's also the co-founder of the M&N Foundation for Aspiring Youth. It is now my pleasure to hand over to Maxsalia to take us through this evening's second session entitled, What About the SDGs? Your Role in Ensuring the Future. Over to you, Maxsalia.
Thank you, Nicolette. Just a second. I'm not sure exactly what happened. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, Maxie.
Yes, you can.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nicolette, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I'm really happy to be here. In tonight's presentation, we will talk briefly about what the Sustainable Development Goals are and why they matter. What does SDG implementation entail? Alignment between Vision 2030 Jamaica and the Sustainable Development Goals. What role or roles can we play and how we can make a difference? We'll also take a quick look at the UN in Jamaica and opportunities for UN engagement, although I'm not officially representing the UN here tonight. But I want to start by asking this question, and I'd like for participants to respond by using the feature under the Participants tab that allows you to respond yes or no. How many of you have already, or how many of you already know or have at least heard about the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda? Okay, I'm seeing hands raised, 3, okay. All right. Okay, so I'm actually speaking to the converted here, which is great. So this session will just be about reminding us of the work and the effort that we need to put in. Thank you so much. Okay. So what are the SDGs and why do they matter? Some of you may recall the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, which helps to drive significant progress towards halving extreme poverty and realizing various key social priorities such as improving maternal health and reducing child mortality. The 2030 Agenda and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals set forth a high level of ambition. It not only aims to complete the unfinished business of the MDGs, but also to pursue a broad yet integrated approach to answering the biggest and most complex challenges of the 21st century within a 15-year timeline. The Sustainable Development Goals are the blueprint to achieving a better and more sustainable future for all. They address the global challenges that we face, including those related to poverty, as you will see in Goal 2, inequality. There is a goal on gender equality, Goal 5, and also Goal 10. Climate change, environmental degradation, peace, and justice. The 17 interconnected goals are aimed at leaving no one behind. One of the very important and key elements of this agenda is that there's a big focus on reaching those that are furthest behind. Oftentimes, this includes persons with disabilities, the elderly, indigenous groups, or even rural women. And so that's actually one of the elements that I really like about the SDGs and that focus, that it's not just about those who are most accessible and doing what is easy. It's challenging us to do what's hard and to give our best at it, you know, to ensure that everybody is able to reach their full potential. There are 169 targets and 232 unique indicators that are being measured as each country works towards the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm not sure how many of you on this call are M&E professionals, but you will recognize that it requires a lot of effort on the level of, you know, on the part of governments, but also on the part of us as citizens to be able to measure and track progress towards SDG implementation. It should be recalled that every member state of the United Nations signed on to the ambitious and transformative agenda in recognition of the fact that there remain significant and persistent challenges despite decades of growth and progress that some countries have seen. Well, all countries have seen overall, but to different extent. The achievement of the SDGs require each of us to take action individually and collectively, locally and globally, and we will talk more about how we can do this throughout the presentation. So the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development constitutes a paradigm shift. The agenda calls for a fundamentally different model of economic progress that is socially inclusive and environmentally sustainable. We cannot continue with business as usual, where we're just seeking growth and wealth at the expense of the environment and at the expense of caring for our fellow citizens. Achieving the SDGs requires the active involvement of all stakeholders, the UN system, national, regional, and local governments, the private sector, civil society, academia, and people at large. Success, of course, depends on pursuing a whole of government and a whole of society approach. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development requires us to think and act differently, ensuring that sustainability is at the core of what we do. The agenda's universality means that the SDGs apply to all countries and to all people. In contrast to the MDGs, the agenda is not a framework primarily prescribed for countries that are economically poorer or in crisis. So the MDGs were focusing on developing countries, but the SDG now forces countries that have never had to look internally at their own situations, such as Canada and the US and several other countries in Europe, to now look at themselves and to see how their citizens are being affected by the various development or economic decisions that are being made, and how best we can all work together as a global community to address the challenges as outlined in the 17 goals. You know, in terms of lessons from 2020, which is, you know, a part of the theme of this conference, I pause here to recognize the impact of COVID-19 on this development agenda. You know, in 2015, when the development agenda was being set, no one anticipated a pandemic or a crisis of this nature, or not most of us at least, anticipated a crisis of this nature. And I believe COVID-19 is a stark reminder of the need for cooperation across borders, sectors, and even generations. Our response, of course, will determine how fast the world recovers, whether we achieve the SDGs, and how well we will handle pressing challenges from, of course, climate crisis to pandemics, future pandemics, of course, inequalities and rapid changes in technology. So, of course, COVID-19 has no doubt caused significant setbacks for this agenda and for development overall. And I'll just refer to two quick examples. When we look at goal 3, which speaks to good health and well-being, we're now faced with a situation where millions of people have fallen ill. You know, health systems are stretched and stressed, and governments have had to divert scarce resources. This will no doubt have an impact on our ability to achieve that goal. When we also look at quality education, which I know a lot of us here, well, in the Caribbean, I'm sure it's not just unique to Jamaica, can recognize that the pandemic has exacerbated inequalities which show up in how we access online education, how our children are able to access online education. And, you know, COVID has helped us in one way to see some of the things that at the surface level, we never recognized that the issues were deeper, you know, like the iceberg. It has helped us to see that, but it has also caused us significant resources in terms of financing, human capital. I mean, if we look at just the number of persons who died from the pandemic alone, we'll recognize the wide-scale impact. Okay, Vision 2030, Jamaica and the SDGs. You'll see on screen, and I'm hoping for those of us who are Jamaicans who are familiar with Jamaica's National Development Plan, Vision 2030, and I know for those of us who are from other islands, you may similarly have a development agenda that your government may have also taken the time out to align with the SDGs. For us here in Jamaica, we see where our 4 development goals have been clearly aligned to the SDGs, or the government recognizes that alignment. In fact, I can say from my knowledge that there is over a 91% alignment with the SDGs and Vision 2030. And that is something our government is especially proud of, because our agenda, of course, was set before the SDGs, and it so happened that we were thinking along the same lines that the 2015 SDGs brought about. So the alignment there is pretty clear, and it's actually something that I believe each of us, as we seek to, of course, support our national development, that we're able to see how the connections are made. I'll pause here to also say that the Planning Institute of Jamaica has responsibility for SDG policy and program implementation nationally. And I would encourage each and every one of us to follow them on social media and to keep up to date with their work, especially if you want to know more about how Jamaica is doing on SDG implementation. I know there's also work being done by the private and philanthropic sectors locally on the SDGs. Recently, I'm not sure how many of you heard of the recent Grace Kennedy Foundation Be the Change Challenge. This was a video competition valued at $100,000 where persons were asked to state why the SDGs are important to them. I know also there was an annual lecture which was held in September, which spoke to the Decade of Action, which we'll speak about in a few minutes. But before we get to talking about the Decade of Action and what that means and what it's asking each of us to do, I would like to hear from each of you. I want to ask you kindly to type in the chat and share with me what's your favorite SDG and why. And we can review some of those later on at the end of the presentation. While you're doing that, I will share with you what's mine. Mine is goal 5, gender equality. I strongly believe that societies that value women and men as equals are safer, healthier, and more productive. A fun fact I'll share with you. I was a youth and women's rights advocate for a number of years and had the opportunity to attend a number of high-level UN conferences, the Commission on the Status of Women, the United Nations Conference on Population and Development, around the time that Agenda 2030 and the SDGs were being framed. You know, I had the opportunity to participate in a number of consultations that contributed to the development of the global goals, particularly conversations around Goal 5. And so for me, there is a personal significance, and I call myself an SDG nerd, But it means a lot to me, the agenda and the principle behind it and what it seeks to achieve for humanity. So please do share with me your favorite SDG and why. Very quickly, doesn't have to be anything too detailed. So now we're going to talk about the decade of action. The SDGs are gaining global momentum. However, we are currently not, and I repeat, not on track as a global community to achieving them. With just 10 years to go, an ambitious global effort is now underway to deliver the 2030 promise by mobilizing more governments, civil society, businesses, and calling on all people to make the global goals their own. So the UN has recognized that we are at a point now where we really need to redouble our efforts if we are going to achieve these commitments that we made to the world in 2015. Also, UN 75 celebration. The UN is marking its 75th anniversary. Unfortunately, it's at a time of great disruption for the world, of course, compounded by the unprecedented global health crisis. In January 2020, the UN launched a global dialogue initiative, and discussions have taken place in all settings across the world, in classrooms, in boardrooms. And the idea is for persons to have an opportunity to be a part of the discussions that take place within this multilateral forum. In order to reach as many people as possible, a 1-minute survey has been created that is quick and easy to complete and asks people about their hopes and fears for the future. For those of you who are in Jamaica, and if you have a digital phone, you probably received a text message on Saturday, which I'll pause to say was UN Day, October 24th, encouraging you to be a part of the conversation. For those of you who saw it and who ignored it, I'm begging you please to go back in your phones and just look back at that message and click on the link. I would really want to encourage everyone to participate in the global survey, which I can tell you is not just an academic exercise. In fact, the preliminary results, because this survey has been launched since January and it goes on until January 2021, which is when the data collection period will end. But the initial results were shared at the UN General Assembly in September and have already started to shape intergovernmental discussions. I'll actually share the link to the survey in the chat at the end of this presentation. And please, it's just 1 minute. So if there's nothing else you've done, which of course I don't expect anybody here to just do this, but if it's the only thing you do, I'm imploring you to take this 1 minute survey and participate in this process. There is also a UN 75 toolkit that is available online with guidelines on how to join and inspire conversations and amplify voices for people to talk and be heard. Many of you I know are a part of various service clubs, professional networks, and community groups. Please get these SDG conversations started. There are resources available, please check them out. It is so important for each of us to own the goals and not think of them as something that our governments are discussing. They affect us in our individual lives. And there are so many times that we are doing things in our community, and if we are not aware, we don't even realize how those actions are helping to achieve some global targets. And I think sometimes we need to just spend some more time reading more about the goals and utilizing the resources that are available. On screen, I'm asking persons to follow, join UN 75 and to use the hashtag UN 75 on social media to add your voices to the testimonials from people who've already taken part. Of course, you should stay engaged online. There's so much content. The hashtag For People for Planet is actually one that is widely used. And join that conversation and see what persons all over the world are doing about the SDGs. So what's your role in ensuring the future? On screen, I'll explain to you. So on the left-hand side, there are some feather banners from a SDG roadshow, which the UN co-hosted with the government of Jamaica back in 2018. We're actually in St. Thomas and had quite a number of persons coming through and learning about the SDGs from our level. That is something that we seek to do. Of course, promoting the SDGs in a holistic way whenever we have the opportunity to, and to take the message and knowledge of the SDGs to communities. Some persons, if you are in Kingston or St. Catherine, may have also seen this JUTC bus on the road at some point. I saw it on the route up to yesterday on Mandela. We also worked along with the government to co-brand that bus to ensure that we're trying to give visibility to goals and to raise awareness nationally. That's what we do as the UN. These efforts take money, but of course there is so much that we can do in our individual capacities, and we're going to talk about that now. So what's your role in ensuring the future, you might ask? Some of you may go on to work with the UN or another multilateral agency, but others will work within government, private sector, become entrepreneurs, continue to work in, well, not continue, but may work or continue to work in academia or civil society. Wherever you go or whatever you do, please remember that we all have a role to play in achieving the SDGs. In terms of the private sector has a huge role to play in terms of assisting us with technology advancement and innovation. One of the good things about the private sector, more so than government and other areas, is the level of flexibility that obtains. You know, you can try new things. There's the spirit of competition breeds creativity and innovation at a pace that is way more advanced than in government. For instance, there's also an opportunity for the alignment of business strategies to the SDGs. Companies can take the time out to review the goals, review the targets, and to see how best their operations can align, and to make that known, make that visible, you know, as persons become more aware and are seeking to invest and to support sustainable businesses. Another important role for the private sector, I believe, is of course creating quality jobs and promoting decent work. This includes protecting labor rights and promoting safe and secure working environment for all workers. You know, while the government can, you know, have certain guidelines or regulations, it is important for us as individuals, whether we're working within the government or the private sector, which sometimes is an informal sector, to ensure that we're doing what's right and in the best interest of our employees. I believe also that the private sector has a key role to play in contributing to financing the development agenda. And so for those of you who go on to lead big companies, big banks, etc., think about SDG investment and impact investing and, you know, contributing in whatever way, maybe to infrastructure projects or whatever it is, to achieving the sustainable development goals. I can tell you clearly off the bat, most governments, including Jamaicans, have a financing gap in terms of achieving the goals. And so there's a great role for the private sector in helping in that way. For persons who are working or will work within the government, it's very important that there's policy coherence and that a systems thinking is applied in the way we work. This will result in tangible changes in how policies are designed, how sectors collaborate, and how people think about partnerships. So the ministries, departments, and agencies of the government all need to be talking to each other. We must ensure that policies in one sector are not creating significant setbacks in others. And I will use the analogy of going to the doctor. If we show up at the doctor's office and we're there because we're having a stomach ache, we would not like for the medication that the doctor gives us to cause us a headache. And it's the same kind of principle that needs to be applied when we're thinking about policy development and ensuring that what we're doing or promoting in one sector is not harming another. And just thinking about this and thinking holistically and encouraging conversations with your counterparts is going to be critical to ensure that, you know, we're not working in silos and that what we're doing is holistic and sustainable. An area that is critical to the agenda, whether you're working in government, civil society, or academia, is quality data generation. Of course, you'll see based on the number of indicators that data helps us to track progress on the SDGs. Also, data disaggregation is especially important because that helps us to identify those who are marginalized and most in need. So for those persons who are interested in research, please do go ahead. The 2030 agenda needs you and needs your support. There is a very important role for data in this process. But on a more personal level, all of us can, one, hold our governments accountable. You know, there's a significant advocacy role for all of us to play as citizens. And we must remember that all 193 member states signed on to this agenda. So from now until 2030, if you ever have an opportunity to meet with any of your elected officials and to ask them a question, take it from me, a smart question to ask them is about the progress being made towards achieving the SDGs nationally. You can't go wrong, always seem super smart. It might be a difficult question for some, but keep that one at the forefront of your mind as we try to hold them accountable to the commitments they made in 2015. We can also change from current behavioral and cultural patterns that promote inequality and intentionally recognize and uphold, basic human rights. We must recognize that no one is beneath us and everyone deserves an opportunity to realize their full potential. This calls for us to stop and think sometimes, who exactly is being left out of development progress? Have we ever stopped to think about that? Which barriers keep people beyond the reach of services and jobs? And we should pause to ask ourselves, are there some things that we're doing that are problematic or unhelpful? And I believe if we start to take that approach and to take a people-centered approach and to change our mindset and to recognize the rights of each and every individual, we'll begin to make significant progress on the SDGs. And human rights is a cross-cutting theme for the SDGs. And, you know, recognizing that is so important. We, of course, can continue to promote collaboration and partnerships in our daily lives and our different projects and activities and our work. Again, we need to move away from operating in silos. Recall that there is a goal dedicated specifically for this, Goal 17, Partnerships for the Goal, which signals the importance of working together. We must also practice sustainable production and consumption. I know not everybody here might be an environmentalist, but it is so, so important because the way we use our very scarce and limited resources is so important to how much or how well we'll be able to achieve these goals and the future that will exist, you know, for this planet. Because currently our practices are very unsustainable and sometimes characterized by overconsumption and wastefulness. I'll ask you, have you ever stopped to think about the food, energy, and water nexus? Can you see a connection between these three important resources? All right, so let's break it down a bit. We need food and water to survive, right? Well, at least most of us do. The global food demand has increased as the population grows. Over the years, we've become more reliant on external sources of energy for cooking, providing warmth, and light, and processing materials. We take so much of this for granted. But if we think about it, if energy is scarce, we may not be able to produce food and distribute water. However, energy production relies a lot on fossil fuel that in turn releases carbon dioxide that affects the environment and climate change in very complex ways that can cause flooding and drought, heat waves and storms. We're seeing some more severe hurricanes in recent times. And all of this can impact on the supply of food and water. And so we must therefore be mindful of the synergies and trade-offs of our actions. And I mean, as an individual, I myself never really took the time to think about that and to think about the ways in which we're producing sometimes when I was younger, how we're producing, and sometimes we produce so much food that goes to waste, right? And it utilizes so much of our resources. We think about how much water it takes to rear animals or to grow crops. And these resources are not infinite. You know, we're already seeing where places are experiencing severe challenges. Quickly, I'll just talk quickly about the UN in Jamaica. So I work within the UN Resident Coordinator's Office, which in Jamaica has overall responsibility to support SDG implementation. Some UN agencies, based on their mandate, will naturally work more closely on some goals than others. There are several resident agencies in Jamaica. There's UNICEF, UNDP, which is the United Nations Development Program, UNFPA, UN Environment, UNAIDS, the International Organization on Migration, PAHO WHO, which you've heard a lot about since the pandemic, the Food and Agriculture Organization, UNESCO, and of course, we also have the UN Department for Safety and Security. But there are also a number of non-resident agencies that cover Jamaica and the broader Caribbean. These are UN Women, the International Labour Organization, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, the World Food Programme, and also the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. While I'm not here tonight in my official capacity as a UN staff, I thought it would be useful to share some of that information. And some of you may also be aware that the International Seabed Authority has its headquarters here in Kingston. In fact, it's the only multilateral or UN headquarters that is in this region. Potential opportunities for the UN, or the role of the UN in achieving the SDGs right now. The UN can serve as an implementer, which implements the programmatic components directly or through implementing partners. Oftentimes we work with civil society or even governments to implement some of the programs. Serve as a technical advisor, which provides programmatic assistance and knowledge sharing. Convener and a broker. One of the things that the UN is known for is to bring together persons to facilitate various conversations and of course to facilitate the development of initiatives. Another role for the UN, is of course related to analysis and tracking progress towards the achievement of the goals. And the last point here, the UN as an investor. The UN is not a donor for sure, and we're not known to have money like many of the other major entities like the World Bank and the IMF. But there are some particular funds that have been invested specifically for the achievement of the SDGs, and we do provide upfront capital to implement some programs currently. Very, very innovative ideas are being utilized actually and being tested and piloted during this process. So in closing, I believe some of the key takeaways are: one, the SDGs are the world's best attempt at a shared language and shared measurement. It's applicable to everyone, everywhere, and we all have a role to play. The SDG is very clearly saying to us that it cannot be business as usual. increasing GDP or wealth alone is not going to get us where we need to be by 2030. We must also prioritize the well-being of people and the protection of the environment. We're recognizing that the COVID-19 pandemic is a setback, but it cannot be, we cannot allow it to be an excuse. We have to keep fighting and trying our best, you know, to achieve these goals because of the benefits and long-term, well, the long-term benefits it have for us as well as future generations. We have the will, the enthusiasm, the capacity and solutions to accelerate action at the pace required by the SDG, but we must do it together. I really hope this session has helped to plant the seed in your mind about the importance of looking at life holistically and beyond just our own immediate realities, to think about how our individual and collective actions impact the current and future generations. Understanding this reality is very, very important. I therefore challenge you to always bear in mind the delicate balance of how do we navigate life, seeking the wealth and prosperity for ourselves and our families, while ensuring that we're not leaving the planet in a worse condition for future generations. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maxsalia. You know, it's important to this topic. It may not seem as the sexiest topic to talk about, but you know, how can we really think about our own future and ourselves and our families without looking at the goals that are in place to ensuring that we have a future to really look and build and look forward to. Again, it's really not the sexiest topic, but I think you have broken down the SDGs, all 17 of them, in practical ways that we as individuals can, you know, implement in our daily lives, as well as in our work setting. A lot of us are in academia or working with NGOs or even volunteer. Karen is a Kiwanian like myself. There is opportunities to ensure that we can achieve the SDGs in those spaces. You know, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen a lot of digital divide, and we're talking about quality education, which is one of the goals that we're trying to achieve. I mean, it's really, you know, it's something that we have to connect with. We really have to connect with. We have to look at it while we're talking about our own future. We can't reinvent ourselves if we don't have the future. We can't connect and lead others without considering these things. So we do have a few questions. And
so Nikita, if I may, the question I asked about persons sharing their personal SDGs, I just realized I got bumped off the call just now, so the chat has totally disappeared for me. Okay, so I'll ask you if there were any, just to read out a few so that we can get to the questions.
We have persons who really shared. A lot of persons indicated that we have persons who said gender equality was important to them, quality education, goal number 1, and you remind me, please.
No poverty.
Right. So one person said climate action, as well, good health and well-being, universal access to health, again, good health and well-being, healthy population and world-class education and training. We do have some repeats, climate action and quality education. And I guess, you know, being in the Caribbean, these are critical areas to look at. We can't exist if we don't think about climate action. Yes. Person spoke about sustainable energy as well, and food security, things that came up during COVID-19. A lot of persons saw where we thought about, oh, what now if we don't have food and access to food? I think COVID-19.
And the wastage of food that happened, you know, we saw on the news, there were a lot of farmers who had no market for their products.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Time and energy and resources such as water, you know, and energy that were put into producing these goods.
Absolutely, and we have some others, you know, reduce inequality, especially towards persons with disabilities and the vulnerable. So persons did share their feedback. We had people indicating that they were sharing this with their fourth form students, which I thought was quite important. I mean, you know, some of us are not even informed about these things until we have to work in the spaces. So I thought, I think it's Clara who was sharing that, and I thought that was really, you know, kudos to her for bringing that to her students and starting, because it really starts with the education. You indicated it started with the conversations as well, and we have to think about the holistic, sustainable development and holding those accountable. And I think those were important to know. So we have some questions, Maxi. So the first question is from Bronte. These were challenges before COVID-19. Is this 10-year period realistic?
Very good question. I mean, it's something that I think, especially as a system, the UN system is really trying to think of. And to be honest, if we do not change the way we're doing things now, and especially in light of COVID, the answer is no. If we do not redouble, triple, if that's even a word, you know, the actions that we're taking, we will not meet the goals. And like I said, COVID is a very, very real setback, you know, and the implications of it, we don't even know yet, because we're not even sure when the pandemic will be behind us, right? And so it's a big challenge, but we just really need to try our best. I know one of the things people say is that the UN is great at coming up with frameworks, and if we don't achieve this by 2030, there might be another framework that comes up. We don't want that. We want to ensure that the future looks brighter, and that, you know, it's a safer, healthier space for those who are around to experience it.
Thank you, Maxi. Bronte also just added, the realization of the SDGs is linked significantly to economics. How are the disparities being bridged? Further, can the SDGs be achieved without cooperation at all levels? For example, the US has started the process of withdrawing from the Paris Agreement. Can we achieve the SDG 13?
Very good question. The SDGs cannot holistically be achieved if we're not all working together. So the actions by the US and the US government is very concerning, you know, as it relates to this global agenda, and especially to climate change and climate action. It's so often, you know, one of the unfortunate realities of it is us as Caribbean states and small island development states, we tend to feel the effects of climate change more, even though our contribution, you know, to carbon emissions, etc., are way less than developed countries. So for a country like the US to want to pull out of such an agreement is a big deal, you know, and it has far-reaching implications for us as Caribbean countries and just for the global agenda. So I hope I answered the entire question. I remember the last part of it.
I believe so. Bronte can
okay.
I lost the questions in the question in the chat, but
okay.
I'm gonna move on to Andrea. Asked, what about data protection? The concept of the rejected needs comes to mind.
Wow, that's a very real challenge at this stage. You know, data. You know, as much as we try to promote technology advancement, it carries its challenges, and that's one of the main ones, data protection. When we move things and we start working online and moving things to a digital space, we run the risk of, you know, being hacked or privacy being invaded. I wish not necessarily to talk much about needs or to share any personal opinions on that, but it's a real challenge, and it is something that I'm not even sure exactly how it is that we're going to address it, because at the same time that fixes are being thought of and created, hackers are working equally as hard to, you know, combat and to find ways to bypass certain mechanisms. So it is in fact a real challenge.
Right, as you said, especially in this era where everything really is being done in a digital space. I mean, we give information without even knowing that we're giving information, and so I think it's data protection is indeed a conversation we really need to have. So thanks for that question, Andrea. Sherlyn also asks, do you think our Caribbean leaders are doing enough to achieve the SDGs by 2030?
I would say yes. I mean, having paid attention, especially, yes, but they can do more. And I'll say this, one of the things that I especially admire, and you've seen it a lot at the UN and the General Assembly, which just passed in September, is the way the Caribbean countries show up. Jamaica, for instance, is playing a very, very key role along with Canada in terms of leading conversations on development financing. And I mean, I've sat down and listened to our Prime Minister speak about it, our Minister of Finance, and this is something they take really seriously and trying especially to represent the voices of small island development states in that forum and our unique needs, you know, especially when we think about debt, right? And in the era of COVID right now, the debt, repaying debt, etc. This is a conversation that I saw just in September where our Prime Minister was leading that and asking for, you know, concessions and extension of timelines for repayments, etc., because it has real implications on our ability to you know, grow economically and to cater for the social and environmental needs of our people. And I see similar representation from Barbados and other countries in recent times. So I believe, and at the level of CARICOM, the SDGs are real, and you know, these are discussions that are ongoing. I believe one of the major shortfalls of our Caribbean situation is access to resources and financing. And whereas we would want to see them show up, you know, in more significant ways sometimes, I know for a fact that the reality is that we are impaired based on financing. But there are areas that we could really just do more on. And I believe one of those is human rights. But for various reasons, we have various perceptions about, you know, what it is if we say we're defending human rights, and the conversation can go from 0 to 100 and people have all sorts of different views in between, rather than recognizing the fundamental and inherent right of each person, you know, to enjoy basic liberties. So there are certain areas that we can certainly do more on, you know, but I believe they are trying in some ways and they are making an impact, especially on the global stage. And I would encourage persons to kind of but to definitely pay attention to those conversations. And again, it's also a way for us to follow up with them, you know, about some of the things that they've said and some of the commitments they've made on these stage and some of the data and information they've presented about the progress that is being made locally.
Thanks so much, Maxsalia. I think because I'm also very connected to the SDGs, I think one of the things that I personally know is, you know, just the ban on plastics and how we can protect our ocean life, as well as even, I'm not even sure if it's a law yet, really, but not eating our parrotfish. You know, I love parrotfish, but I know what it's doing for our reefs, and it's a part of protecting our ocean life. And even just climate action. We have Kim added something I think that's really important. I want to take it because she's also spoke about if we're doing enough as countries in the area of SDGs. But I'm going to ask a question that she posed in terms of kind of rephrasing it. How can we raise awareness and stress the importance of the SDGs more?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is even something that we I think even, well, as the UN, we're also thinking about this. How can we ensure that the SDGs are not seen as, you know, being external and being global and being something for, you know, just heads of governments to discuss, but having people recognize the impact, the real impact. It has to be made to be practical and real for individuals. We have to start to break things down and, you know, not necessarily use technical terms, but for instance, start discussions about the food, energy, water nexus, like starting to think, you know, in very practical ways about how our decisions are impacting development. And I believe sometimes when we're talking, for instance, to a farmer in a rural community, you have to try for them to understand how their individual action and what it is they're doing, if they've developed a very, you know, sustainable irrigation system or whatever it is, they may be doing good or doing bad, how that adds up, you know, to a bigger picture and to the effort that persons are making. I think right now, and I don't believe here in Jamaica, we've done a great job at, you know, making the SDGs relatable. I think there's so much more that we can do, but we really, in our own ways, can help by starting these conversations. Like I said, if you're a part of certain community groups or youth groups, have a discussion night that we're talking about the SDGs, similar to what we're doing here. We have to bring it to the communities, and, you know, having it as an abstract idea of just having 17 goals, the average person is gonna ignore it, you know, or not be able to relate to that, but we have to make it relatable.
Thank you so much, Maxsalia. Thank you for your insights and all that information. We did put the link in the chat, so persons, please complete that survey.
Oh, you did? Thank you so much, because I forgot about it.
No, we're talking about equipping yourself for the future. We've spoken about emotional intelligence yesterday and reinventing ourselves and making ourselves relevant. We spoke about connecting today, and we also spoke about, you know, our role in ensuring that we have a future through the SDGs. It has been quite a wonderful day too. And on behalf of our participants and organizers, I would like to thank our presenters for their enlightening presentations and making themselves available to share their expertise. It was very much appreciated. To our lovely participants, I'm so thankful. We have had 2 engaging days, and it's because of you. It's because of your questions. It's because of your comments. We appreciate you. Thank you for joining us. It was not possible without you. You have been very, very engaging. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow at on our last day as we speak about team building skills for entrepreneurs with Kurt Brown, a strengths-based approach to 5 ways for an improved quality of life with Dr. Ty Richardson. Please invite others to join and help them benefit from this conference as well. Thank you so much. We see you at 7 p.m. Jamaican time tomorrow or 8 p.m. Eastern Caribbean time. Thanks again. We look forward to seeing you. Have a lovely evening.